What was the capital of the Byzantine Empire? Somebody's saying it. Constantinople. Capital of the Byzantine Empire.
What is that again?
Constantinople was the capital of the Byzantine Empire. How is the Black Death spread?
Rats.
Rats, but what did the rats do? The fleas, not the rats. It was the fleas on the rats. And somehow these fleas only picked one rat that they really liked, and it wouldn't eat from any other rat but one rat. But they also liked humans. So they would go from rat to human when they could, particularly the black rat. Then the brown rat came in and moved the black rat out, and this greatly reduced the incidence of plague. You know, the fleas would not eat from the black rat, from the brown rat. But, if you studied parasitology, you may have known a lot of parasites are really particular about what kind of animal they live off of. All right. The Black Death was carried to Europe from where? It was carried from Asia by the Mongolians who were coming across and probably not even aware that the rats were following them. Yes?
Specifically, which place in Asia?
Mongolia. As specific as I get, Mongolia, not China.
Carried
So
from
much
Mongolia to
So if it was carried from Mongolia to the Mediterranean world by the Mongolians, and then it's believed that a Genoese ship carried it into Europe. The Genoese ship had rats, and of course, you heard the saying, and if you ever saw the movie The Titanic, when the rats leave the ship, it's time for you to leave. The rats tend to leave first. Somehow they seem to instinctively know that the ship is going down. And they'll come out from places you didn't know they existed, and all of a sudden they're all over the place. But the rats would live in the holds of ships and go from one place to another, and it's believed the Genoese carried the Black Death into Europe. All right. The Islamic calendar begins with what event? What event? They count time from this event. Muhammad, yes, doing what? Muhammad, it's not so much a pilgrimage, it's a flight. His flight from Mecca to Medina. Yeah, it's called the Hijra. Anyway, it's the flight from Mecca to Medina. That's where they begin their time. All right. Perhaps the number one thing that kept Islam from taking over the whole world was
itself.
they started fighting among themselves. Otherwise, folk, they might have pulled it off. But they spend a lot of time fighting among themselves. Let's see. Can you name me two things that the Arabs invented before the year 1000? It's hard to name anything they invented after that. But before the year 1000, what did they invent? Algebra and the zero. Algebra and the zero. All right. Let's see. I've mentioned already how that Europeans did not generally go to China and Chinese did not come to Europe, but there was an exchange of goods.
The Silk Road?
Silk Road, yeah, Silk Road. Their goods made it across. In general, what Europe gave to the Chinese was gold and silver, and what the Chinese gave to Europe was silks and porcelains and things that Europe could not make otherwise. How is silk made?
Silkworm.
Silkworms. Yeah, one European noblewoman thought came from a tree, wanted to see a silk tree, silkworm. The Kingdom of Nubia, located on what continent? Africa, Nubia. According to your book, Sheba is located in, not that I agree with it, but at least it's in your book. Sheba is located in what region? Arabia. Arabia. Yeah, that's not generally not considered the Middle East. It's on the Red Sea side of Arabia. Arabia has the Red Sea on one side, the Persian Gulf on the other, the Indian Ocean at the bottom. It's a large peninsula. But anyway, it's located on the Red Sea side of Arabia. The continent that has the world's most natural resources. Africa. A religion that generally worships spirits, nature worship, is called animism. Animism. It's generally associated with primitive peoples. Let's see. All right. The Indians who lived in the region of the Gulf of Mexico and the northern part of South America, today they're largely extinct, where they... I barely mentioned them, but I believe I did. I mentioned this at one time, the Arawak. I got to looking them up over the weekend. They had to make sure, and they asked, the Arawak ceased to exist as a tribe in the mid-1700s. But DNA shows that 40% of your Indians living in that part of the world still carry Arawak DNA. But they ceased to exist as a tribe in the 1700s. Killed off largely by European diseases or by the Europeans in outright murder. Arawak. The world's largest pyramid, not the tallest, but it's not the pyramid of Giza in Egypt, but it's what pyramid located where? It's the Mayan pyramid, yeah, located at Capan. Located at Capan. It's actually the world's most massive pyramid.
Located where?
Capan. And the Capan is in the Yucatan Peninsula, in what is today Mexico.
It's near Cancun.
Okay. Let's see. Oh yes, the monks took 3 vows. Vows of what?
Chastity, poverty,
Obedience.
Obedience, yeah. Chastity, poverty, and obedience. Not always given in that order, but the reason I always remember that one was when I was taking a fill-in-the-blank test. I missed it. I knew if it had been on a multiple choice, I'd know I'd have gotten it. And I just could not think of it. I had to get all 3 of them right to get any points at all. This teacher was rather strict. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. All right. Now, a couple of dates. The year that Constantinople fell, 1453. The year the 100 Years' War ended, 1453. Same date. Let's see. Oh yes. Well, I've already mentioned it. The king who led Joan of Arc lead an army, that was Charles VII. The #1 crop grown in China and has been for centuries.
rice.
Rice. Yeah. Rice takes a lot of work and and that's why their families have to be somewhat extended. To keep the barbarians out, the Chinese did what? Built the wall, built a great wall. And it did a fairly good job of keeping them out. All right. When Kublai Khan invaded Japan, what happened to his fleet?
Got destroyed.
Got destroyed by what? I mean, did the Japanese fight valiantly or?
Storm.
What's that?
Storm.
Storm, big storm. Yeah, the storm's name was called a kamikaze. And you run into that word kamikaze again in connection with World War II. Just like we run into the word Aryan in connection with World War II. All right, in Europe, if you had lived in Europe in the Middle Ages, you would have been someone's, all right, well the word I'm trying to think of, where you'd have been a servant to someone. Not a serf, but you might have been a serf. Vassal. You'd have been someone's vassal. Everyone in Europe was a vassal, except for maybe the Pope was a vassal to God. The king was a vassal to the Pope. The dukes were vassals to the kings. The counts were vassals to the dukes, etc., etc.
When, during what time?
As if vassal meant that you were subordinate to a higher up.
Around what time?
During the Middle Ages, during the period of time from about 900 to 1400. Who was the wife? Well, she was actually the wife first of the King of France, then the wife of the King of England. She went to the crusade for the King of France. Say it louder. She owned a lot of land in France, Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was the mother of King John and King Richard. All right, now why do you remember King John? Very important. He was the king who signed the
Oh,
Magna Carta. Yeah, he was forced to sign the Magna Carta.
He had no decisions in law.
Basically, the Magna Carta limited the power of the kings. Yes?
Who was the wife of
The wife of the King of France, who later married the King of England, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor.
And her sons were King John and...
Their sons were King Richard and King John. Yeah, I read a book while I was required reading when I was in grad school, Eleanor of Aquitaine, the four kings. The four kings were two husbands and two sons who were kings. Eleanor of Aquitaine. All right. Who is a king of France who is credited with, among other things, bringing France on a strong financial footing, setting up judges? I told a story about him getting lost in the woods, but King Philip Augustus. Philip Augustus. Now, when I talk about the papal schism, what am I talking about? Great schism occurred in Europe in the 1300s when... What's that?
They have multiple popes.
Well, it had multiple popes, yes. The King of France moved the Pope from Rome to Avignon, and 70 years later, some people in the church moved the office, they elected a Pope in Rome. You wound up first with 2 popes, then they elected another one, and we had 3 popes. But finally, they called a council, and all Europe's monarchs agreed, whoever you pick, we'll accept. So they called a council, and the council picked a pope, and the other popes retired. And you only had one from that day till this. Great Schism. Oh yeah, what was the city where that the King of France sent the popes to when they took him from Rome? City in southern France called Avignon. Avignon. It's called the Babylonian captivity. It lasted some 70 years. All right. In the high Middle Ages, this was a period of prosperity when people were healthy. What was the climate like? Warm. And then it cooled. And 1/3 of Europe's population died. And now we're trying to keep things cold in hopes that the civilized people will all die off. And anyway, that's another issue, though. But folk, I mean, I still say the hotter it gets, the better it gets. The colder it gets, the worse it gets. I mean, this is, to me, it's just simply plain fact. All right. The plow that Europeans invented in the high Middle Ages, it took teams of horses to pull, what was called it just took many horses to pull it because it got deep in the soil, really deep. Called a caruca. Before that, they just scratched the surface of the plow, but the caruca got really deep and really turned the dirt over. And if any of you know anything at all about farming, folk, we don't know why, but food plants grow better when the dirt has been turned over once, and then you put the seed on the top, I mean not on the top, but a little bit in a few inches inside the dirt has been turned over, depending on the type of seed you're planting. Again, some of you might know something about what I'm talking about. But that plow is called a caruca. See, it's a foreign word, so it's spelled with italics. I believe it's C-A-R-U-C-A. Let's see. Up until the year 1500, who were the most inventive, creative people on the face of the earth?
China.
The Chinese. Again, I don't even want to go over another list of the things that they invented, but they were the most inventive people on the face of the earth. All right. A man came from Normandy to take the throne of England from a man who had no royal blood in his veins. What was the name of the man who conquered England from a king who had no business having a throne in the first place? King William, called William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror.